Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, our Earth Observation and GIS webinar supported by Women in Geospatial, Irish chapter of the EUROGI group. So we have two women here today, Jessica Hicks and Vivienne Kelly, who again are going to make my life easy by introducing themselves. So we'll have a presentation for about 20-25 minutes, some questions, and then we'll move on to the second presentation. So sit back, relax, have a cup of tea, have your lunch. And Jessica, would you like to begin?
I'd love to. Let me start sharing my screen here. Thank you all for attending, if even for a moment or for the whole thing. I'm delighted to participate in this event today, and what I'll be doing is I'll be going through an introduction of myself and my background, and then moving into a project that I'm managing at FARMEYE, the current company that I'm working for. So for those of you that don't know me, I am American. I did my BSc in Michigan, at the University of Michigan, and that was in earth science and French. Decided to kind of expand in the French sector there, but I had a focus on paleontology and paleoclimatology, which brought me into a higher degree at University of Leeds in England, where I studied climate change and environmental policy, but focused on climate modeling. And just as a background, from some of the things that I've done up to the point to where I am now, because I understand for some people it's a straight path, but for me, it wasn't as much of a straight path as I think my family would have wanted me to have. But I had the experience in undergrad of getting out into the field, doing field work, especially one monumentous occasion where we found a mammoth outside of the university grounds. So it was about 20-30 kilometers away. And we were able to go and dig up this specimen. And that brought loads of interest from myself, but also from others in the area to what we were working on at the university in the paleontology department. And so after this field experience, I was very, very, very interested in understanding, okay, climate change is a massive issue now. What was the background? How did we get to this point? How do we know that there's been such an abrupt change over time? And so I was really interested in kind of seeing it for myself. But after I graduated, I understood that there needs to be more practical applications. And so I headed over to Ghana, where I worked with Brian Arbick and Adam Simon to run a summer school, but also do a little bit of research on my own. So I was looking at more of the environmental and sustainability side of things, trying to get myself more into the present day climate impacts. And so we were looking specifically at cocoa production. And in this area, as we started to talk to individuals at the local level and governmental level, we found it wasn't necessarily all the impacts of climate change on cocoa production, but also local influences of mining as well. And so my brain started to understand and expand on how many factors are involved in topics like this. And so that led me to do the master's in Leeds to get a better understanding of current climate change and environmental policy. And from that, I did focus on climate modeling and ended up getting into a meteorology and climatology role. And so this was quite interesting for me because I had focused so much on the past, I could now focus on the present. And monitored weather all around the world, was living in different locations, experiencing this weather myself. And eventually, I landed in Ireland, where I started a position as an Earth observation executive with Icon Geo. So changing from sole focus on weather and weather analysis and more Earth observation using satellite imagery into land and climate analysis. And that path brought me to National Parks and Wildlife Services, where I was working on a peatlands project there with lovely colleagues in that department. And then recently I moved into a position as R&D project manager at FARMEYE. And that brings me to the project that we're currently working on that might be of interest to some of you. Just as a bit of background for this project, so hedgerows in Ireland tie into issues of climate change, and they act as a sort of carbon stock for Ireland to help Ireland focus on their emissions reductions and targets. And so when I'm talking about hedgerows here, I'm going to give you a little bit of background and talk about the tool that we're building and the service that's involved that will ultimately benefit the individuals that are restoring and monitoring these biodiversity hotspots. And so the importance of hedgerows in Ireland, they offer three main things: biodiversity, ecosystem management, and farmland structure. So this involves sources of food, shelter, nesting sites for living things, but also reduce soil erosion, water quality benefits, regulation of water flow, on top of benefits to farm or farmland, which help prevent wind, their natural livestock barriers, and their natural boundaries between plots of land. And so in the Republic of Ireland, there is a total of 689,000 kilometers of hedgerow. And within this space, you see 600 species of plants, 20 species of mammals, 150 species of insects, and 65 species of birds. And the reason why there's a strong focus right now in the agricultural sector to maintain, restore, and extend hedgerow ecosystems. And some of these regulations and policies are tied to CAP, the Natural Biodiversity Action Plan, the Climate Action Plan, but also, like I mentioned before, it's aimed to help the Irish climate targets, emission targets, and goals. So by 2030, Ireland is hoping to reduce emissions by X amount and eventually become carbon neutral by 2050. And so the reason why FARMEYE had started to look into this, number one, they have a massive farm base for their stakeholders and their users. And so what we're trying to facilitate here is a way for these individuals or organizations or companies to find a low-cost means of assessing hedgerow biodiversity and volume. And that offers sustainability measurements and carbon reporting. So what we hope to provide is an accurate and verifiable data reporting structure and facilitate hedgerow maintenance for these individuals or stakeholders. And so through our goal to support this, what we're creating right now is a tool to be used in field that will be portable. It will facilitate location precision, there's going to be a smart application to be used. So any surveyor, anyone in the field is able to understand where the hedgerow is at a precise location, where the hotspots are in the survey, etc. And from this, we aim to incorporate EO analysis, so satellite imagery, and other forms of LiDAR and DSMs, DTMs, in order to create a remote monitoring tool with on-the-ground measurements to support an analysis that will be able to identify habitat metrics such as woody volume mass, hedgerow extent, and carbon stock. And so this tool that incorporates in-field measurements as well as EO analysis will help benefit the accuracy and structure of this data, so that when a report is produced and given to the farmer, given to the government, you can verify that information and it can be used in global figures. And so one important factor when you're doing any type of EO analysis, you need on-the-ground measurements. And what we're trying to facilitate here is precision with these on in-field measurements. So when we get our potential tool in the field, we plan to have GNSS or GPS included with this tool, so that the surveyor who's capturing LiDAR data, who's capturing audio data, in-field photos and video as well, they'll be able to have a precise location, precise timestamp that you might not get with normal GPS wander per se. And I say GPS wander, and I'm including this graph here. What you might see is the purple lines here, the yellow and the green. So what this is representing is, I don't know if you've ever used your smartphone to, hopefully you've used Google Maps or Apple Maps or any type of mapping application. When you're going to a specific location, your location on your smartphone might not be in the right location. It might be across the street or a street over, and you have to wait for your device to adjust and be able to provide a region in which you might be in. But what we're incorporating is something called GNSS, which is a form of GPS that communicates with satellites to get the user's exact location. And so it reduces this wander to extent where I think it's, 1 meter accuracy. So in field, this is really important, because when you're capturing these measurements and you're using satellite imagery, you need to be able to accurately identify those points in which you captured that data, because that data can then be paired with the satellite imagery to perform the analysis to an accurate extent. And so another reason why we wanted to give this precise positioning is because this tool, it's not supposed to just be for surveyors in a field, in a plot of land. It can also be used on vehicles to capture hedgerows along railway or roadway. And the plan is to make this accessible so that it can be transferred to multiple different environments in order to capture the full image of the hedgerow. And so what you can capture on the ground are from the LiDAR tool is these points here. Each and every one of these points is captured from the LiDAR penetrating these objects. And so you get an understanding of the height of the object and where it is in your field of vision. And what we can then do is pair it with satellite imagery and a DTM, or something that was quite exciting that was released in March, I think on Earth Day, or was it April, sorry, the Meta tree canopy model. So this is very, very, very exciting. If everyone is aware, Blue Sky is one of they're a great aerial imagery provider in Ireland, and their resolution is excellent. But for some companies, for certain clients, that price tag is quite out of reach. And so this Meta tree canopy model, although it is based on a model in AI, I think we've been trying to do some testing to assess the accuracy of these outputs. And so far, as a free means to pair with this tool to facilitate access to hedgerow mapping, it's a brilliant data set that we're hoping to take advantage of. And so incorporating photogrammetry, LiDAR, satellite imagery, you can then build these 3D hedgerow models. And from a 3D model, you can accurately interpret and analyze what is going on in the specific site that you're looking at. So you can understand what the species are and where they are. You can understand the height, you can understand the width, and you can get machine learning algorithms. And we are thinking about AI, although there are some downfalls of AI, as we've seen recently with some of the chatbot outputs as of late. But we'd like to make sure that we're producing the most accurate model that we're able to in order to support cost-effective solution for our potential clients. And so what we're trying to do is pair the satellite imagery, the EO, pair LiDAR, pair the Meta tree canopy model in order to get an accurate interpretation of the hedgerow model on our survey tool. And so this is an example of what it would look like before the surveyor is to go out into the field. So hotspots can be identified, locations can be marked on a map, and the surveyor will have that precise positioning so they can go to those locations and capture the correct images, the correct LiDAR scenes in order for us to accurately produce this model. And so at the end, like I've been saying, so what some of the outputs are speciation. Over time, we're planning on allowing this to be a long-term monitoring program for these stakeholders, so that the users can understand how the hedgerow is changing over time, not just at one timestamp, so that although you can get an accurate timestamp of what's going on in the current day, you have an accurate understanding if there's long-term measurements to see how the hedgerow is changing, how you've either been able to regenerate the land, or if there have been cutbacks, what can you do to then restore that land back to where it originally was. Those measurements can help, like I said, go towards Irish climate or carbon and emissions targets, and it can also benefit the species, flora, fauna in the area. And so understanding change over time, understanding the carbon value, it's not just for, I guess, the government, it's for the species, it's for the land, and it's quite an exciting project to be a part of, incorporating the EO aspect with the geospatial mapping and visualization. And if anybody has any questions regarding any of those details, please feel welcome to let me know. And I think that may have been shorter than expected, but thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was great. So I think people can use the chat if they want to send questions. Feel free to do that. I'm not sure. I don't think people can unmute in the current setup. But I suppose I have, it's fantastic. It's a great project. Just a couple of technical questions, I suppose. So the ground measurements that you're making, would they be made by, say, a specialist? Are they going to be used for sort of
Absolutely.
calibration of your and validation of your data?
That's one of the main reasons why we wanted the on the ground tool per se, because although Earth observation is a wonderful tool, there are so many outcomes that you can get from EO analysis. You do need ground measurements. You do need some form of validation in order to support the analysis, because originally FARMEYE was wondering, can we perform this hedgerow assessment just with EO, just with satellite imagery, just with DSMs, DTMs? But you do need data in field to verify and validate what exactly is going on. So it goes back to your first comment there, or first question there. Will this be used by specialists? All data captured in field will be achieved from a specialist, and it will be either an ecologist surveyor or an ecologist proper. And so it's quite exciting to see the extent to which this has been planned, because I feel like some projects that I've worked on before, you don't get the on the ground measurements that you need. So it's great for me to see that the planning for this project has included that aspect to it. And I don't think I'm able to access the chat function here,
Okay.
so I might need you to help me read those off.
Yeah, sure. There is a question from Sita. She says, "Hi, Jessica, great presentation. Just curious about the Meta tree canopy data. How good was it if you were comparing it with the Blue Sky DTM?"
Right. So we're currently in the process of performing that analysis. So far, I wouldn't be able to give you a percentage in terms of accuracy, but the alignment that we're seeing at the moment, we've assessed 5 snapshots, 5 areas of interest, and the alignment appears to be quite good. Now we need to do an accurate, a full analysis of that, but it's very promising, especially for something that's freely available to the public.
And is that an AI product, the tree canopy?
So I think it's ML, and I believe AI is involved. So the model is based off of Maxar imagery, which is excellent, the very high res there. So I'm quite excited that they're using that for this model. I have done some reading, and in certain locations around the world, the accuracy is quite low, but that just might be dependent on the imagery that they were using. So it's something to maybe be a bit cautious of and to do more research on, so that we're not fully reliant on it. But in order for us to maybe offer a low cost option or a lower cost option, it's very exciting.
Sure. Great. Okay, thanks very much. We'll move on to, yeah, Sita says thanks for that. We'll move on to Vivienne's presentation. If you could stop sharing the screen there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica. That was really good. Really interesting to see what's going on, and I suppose such practical applications of it. It's great. I'll share my screen. hopefully that's come through.
Yeah, lovely.
Okay. So I struggled a little bit because I'm not involved in projects on a day-to-day basis. I kind of struggle a little bit on what I would talk about today. And I guess the one thing I can see very clearly is the volumes of spatial data that we're generating at the minute, whether it's GIS, Earth observation, remote sensing, all of the bits in between. It's exciting, but I think there is a need for us to be really confident in it. And I want to kind of come away from this session just encouraging everybody to think about how we can be more confident and how we can get all of our stakeholders more confident in our spatial data that we're generating and analysing. So a little bit about me. My journey was probably a bit more linear, but there were a couple of circles along the way. Today being the start of the Leaving Cert, my favourite subject in school was geography, and I did geography in the Leaving Cert. When I went to college, I particularly wanted to do geography as a science, so I ended up in Trinity, and I suppose I started off in the biologies and ended up specialising in geography. If I hadn't done that, I probably would have got into botany. That was my other favourite subject. After college, my first opportunity was in the EPA as a GIS fellow, which was probably, I thought it was a fancy word for a pretty junior GIS analyst. There weren't a huge number of GIS datasets back in those days, and it was the Water Framework Directive was the real driver of national spatial datasets in Ireland. And myself and a colleague, Fiona O'Rourke, we spent a lot of our time digitising the rivers, digitising coastlines, high water, low water marks, transitional waters, estuaries, and trying to create that national set of data that river basin management would be built from. I then moved to Compass as a GIS analyst, and I suppose I broadened out from the water framework there and did lots of different kinds of projects. But then in 2009, I went back to the EPA. I went back, I suppose, in a GIS role, but I ended up mostly in a business analysis role with a bit of project management thrown in. And then in 2016, I came back to Compass. So I went around in a couple of circles in order to get to here. And in February 2020, what year is it? 2022, I took on the role of managing director as Geoid stepped away. Just a little bit about Compass. What do we do? I think we do a little bit of everything. We started off as a GIS and data company. We were based, I suppose, the original company was in Geoid's mother's sitting room, looking at GIS, using desktop GIS, playing with those early GIS data sets. As GIS evolved into web technologies, Compass evolved with it, and we did a lot of custom development for workflow-driven GIS solutions, and also a lot of mobile applications. So we would have a number of national applications, web and mobile applications that we support for national clients. And then we also have, so we're also developing an Earth observation. So we have been working with remote sensing and Earth observation for a number of years, but as we all know in this series, Earth observation is really ramping up. So it kind of fits nicely with everything else. In the centre, I suppose we have multidisciplinary teams, we have a lot of innovative thinking, and I think what we like to value a lot is our collaboration and our partnership. We apply what we do, our technologies and how we work in a kind of a mission, I suppose, and I've been reading a little bit about mission statements. So we have a mission to provide predictive information for sustainable communities. At the moment, we analyse data to create information insights for decision-making bodies. So there could be regulators, planners, government departments, and that information informs the development of sustainable communities. So it could be looking at transport, it could be looking at natural resource management, utilities, community wellness, it could be anything. We provide that community information through the cross-sectoral innovations of geospatial services, Earth observation, development, more and more machine learning, and then along with strategic advice and solution design. And then we apply it again to agriculture, transport, anywhere really, local authorities, private industry. So that's, I suppose, a bit about what we do. And then a few people will be aware of the company history, and it's good to just clarify all of that. Compass was founded in 1997 by Geospatial Vivienne and Paul Mills. Then Compass was acquired by TRACSIS in 2019. In parallel, Icon Group was founded in 1994 by Tom McHugh and was acquired by TRACSIS in November 2021. So we are all part of TRACSIS PLC, and now we operate as one consolidated company. You may see on LinkedIn that we're Compass Informatics and TRACSIS GEOINTELLIGENCE. Compass Informatics reflects and respects, I suppose, the long history that we have in Ireland, and TRACSIS GEOINTELLIGENCE it kind of links more closely in with the PLC branding. So that is our name, I guess, in the UK and elsewhere. So it's a little bit, hopefully, to clarify some of the history. So this was the bit where I struggled a little bit, but I guess I thought, because I'm not really involved on a day-to-day basis in projects, but I get to see lots of projects. I get to see the beginnings of lots of projects through the tenders that we respond to. I get to discuss lots of projects with different clients and colleagues and peers and things. And I have a couple of observations. I think really positively, the prevalence of GIS, geospatial data science, Earth observation, is rapidly increasing and continues to rapidly increase. You could probably draw quite a nice graph from the year 2000, when the Water Framework Directive arrived and said you must report in GIS, to now, and it will go up, up and up. And I don't think that's going away. And I think the recognition and the importance of geospatial data and technologies is widespread. And there are all sorts of new organizations being set up at the minute, and nearly the first thing that each of them is saying is, what does my GIS look like? I need email, I need PowerPoint, but I need some GIS in order to do my work. And I probably should clarify that when I talk about geospatial, I mean all of the stuff that's GIS, but all of the stuff that is also Earth observation. And I kind of see it as one combined ecosystem. I think there has long been a willingness across the public sector to reuse data, and I think there's an ambition to reuse data, and this was also demonstrated in an OGCIO survey. So OGCIO is the Office of the Government Chief Information Officer. So they carried out a survey looking at lots of different public sector organizations, and they want to reuse data, whether it's spatial data or other data. And that reflects our experience across Compass, that organizations don't necessarily want to recreate their own data. They want to take what's there and build on it. However, I think that the confidence in the reuse of data is undermined by inconsistency in our data practices. And it could just be the frequency in which the updates are out there, the way data is collected, websites going up, websites going down. None of it is a major problem, but I think altogether it just undermines the confidence in the reuse of data. And I think national initiatives, I think it's really important that we have spatial data, because national initiatives need spatial data to understand the problems and track progress against actions with confidence, and never more so than now, I suppose, with all of the climate change actions. This is my attempt at a bit of a graphic to show. So on the left, we have national data sets. We know government organizations are really good at producing national data sets. There are loads of them. There have been a number of attempts at national portals. There are many portals out there. GeoHive is a good example. There's lots of geoportal instances by the EPA, the Marine Institute, others. Other organizations provide data through an API by request. So there are lots of national ways of getting national data. However, that data set is often picked up and analysed and used by national organisations for decision making, for strategic planning, for operations and delivery. And it creates this additional secondary information that is really, really valuable, but is not being reused. Often because it is one step away from the original set of data, and it leads to a further erosion of confidence in the data. And then you add in Earth observation, and Copernicus is only just one example, and the opportunities we have with satellite imagery and Earth observation are huge and really, really exciting. We've got EO data services, the likes of what Jess just showed us, and all sorts of other ones around the place. And that's added to the mix, I guess. So even more valuable data is not being reused, and it's a plethora of information and data out there that public service organisations can't really get their heads around and don't really know if they can stand over it or not without having to do a load of new work. So it makes sense to start from scratch again sometimes. But rather than just pointing out the problems, I guess, why do we need confidence in spatial data? Firstly, we need it for digital twins. Everyone's talking about digital twins. Again, I'm showing my age, but digital twins have been around a long time. And I think in my GIS textbook going back to the late 1990s, it was probably promised that GIS itself is a digital twin. But they're there, everyone's talking about them again. And in order to have a really robust digital twin that we can count on, we need to understand our data. Jess alluded to it earlier as well. There's spatial AI, we're getting into predictive information, there's machine learning, all of this extra technology. We need to understand the fundamentals of our data, and can we make decisions against it? Because if we can't make decisions against it, none of it really matters. But this is only possible if we have confidence. And this is the two blue pictures here are from a 2014 presentation by Lorraine McNerney, who was at the time in the Ordnance Survey. She's moved on to other organisations since. But what was going on probably in the early 2000s-ish, there was an awful lot of talk of a national spatial data infrastructure as the basis for spatial data discovery, evaluation and application. And the components of that would be policies, people, data and technology. So pretty sensible, but it never fully transpired, or it transpired in lots of bits. So I think you could probably put a scorecard against all of those components and say, yeah, we have a lot of this, but it's not coming together. There's something missing, I think. I think though the bit that is missing is probably something that could be called data provenance. To me, data provenance is, where has this data come from? How did it get here? And it includes all of these components of spatial data infrastructure. So whether they're policies that have driven the generation of the data set, like water framework monitoring programs, for example, or the climate action plans at the minute, or the people and the professional development and how they've cooperated across different organisations to do it, who has been part of the decision making in the quality assessment of that data. Where did it come from? Did it come from satellite imagery? Did it come from machine learning generated image? Did it come from somebody out walking the fields? And then what technology has been used in order to generate that data? And I think when we understand data provenance, that's just the little bit. You push it back in through the data national portals, and then you've got confidence in decision making. That gives you your digital twins, your spatial AIs, all of the above. Oops, sorry. So I guess what can we do? And what I hope is for all of us, and for all of us to kind of recognise this responsibility as geospatial practitioners, no matter what side of the GIS Earth observation bit that you sit in. But I think we can each encourage a national dialogue on geospatial data and confidence in geospatial data. It's essential for climate change commitments. It's essential to understand our housing policies. It's essential to our food security and many other national initiatives. We need it to understand where we are now and monitor change as we hope to improve the environment for everybody, communities for everybody. I think also we as geospatial professionals can commit to reusing data and republishing data and really pushing out the importance of the message of reusing data. There are lots of primary data sets out there. They're kind of easy to get your hands on. It's the secondary data and the analysis outputs that can be harder to get your hands on. And it's those data sets that are really driving policy and driving decision making. And we need them in lots of different ways in order to understand what we are making decisions against. I think also there's a lot of infrastructure out there and technologies and potential for duplication of effort there. And I think that would be good, not to see it all being pushed together, but I suppose as Jess alluded to earlier, that we all kind of come together and we look for the synergies and try and bring the technologies together as well. I think I think part of the reason why the National Spatial Data Infrastructure maybe didn't take off in the way that it was foreseen is perhaps there was too much of a focus on the technology, too much of a want for it to be a single thing in a single place. Where now I think the technologies allow that flexibility, allow that freedom and that flow of data much more easily. And it takes, I guess, the politics out of it a little bit. And then also a commitment to share our knowledge and our expertise, because we have a lot of knowledge and expertise. And it's the idea of a national spatial infrastructure in 2014 was a big idea, and it was important, and it still is important. So I think by sharing our knowledge, by sharing our expertise, we'll make progress, and we won't keep going around in the same kind of circles as perhaps my earlier career did. And then lastly, it's the shared understanding of data quality and data provenance, if you want to call it that. Data provenance comes from a framework that we did with the Marine Institute. The Marine Institute led on a data quality management framework. And part of that is putting in place your standard operating procedures to manage data, but a huge amount is understanding your data quality. So you can make decisions on data that is not top quality as long as you understand what the quality of that data is. And again, then just the data quality is made up by the policies and the institutional arrangements. It's definitely made up by the people, the cooperation, the skills, the data that's already there, and then putting the onus on improving the data that's already there rather than creating new data. And technologies, sharing our understanding of how technologies can improve data quality and how technologies can be integrated across the board to make things more efficient. So hopefully that is kind of giving you a sense of data quality and where it's come from in Ireland a little bit, and hopefully giving you some food for thought. And I would be happy to take any questions or hand back to Jenny.
Great, thanks very much, Vivienne. That was terrific. Yeah, 10 years later, and we're still looking for. Just want to say, I'd mentioned this to Vivienne just before the webinar started. So ICHEC, along with the HEAnet, actually submitted a white paper to government on national spatial data infrastructure. So primarily, around the technologies, but also around the governance. But we are trying to push for some investment in that area, especially with our new HBC system coming up. And we're looking at developing data spaces in different sectors. So there's different issues in different sectors, but there's also different solutions in different sectors. Mm-hmm. So if you can bring together people from different sectors, you can actually reach solutions quite quickly in some cases, but it requires conversation. There's definitely a conversation to be had around all of those issues. The technology is actually developing so quickly that, in fact, a spatial data infrastructure probably doesn't mean a big black box anymore. It just means pipelines to different databases held by different people. But it does require cooperation and collaboration to set those up, obviously.
Yeah.
So again, if people want to put questions into the chat, please feel free. It's a pity that we can't just unmute and come in. But yes, the data provenance is definitely, it's not an easy issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there are different aspects, I suppose, for each data set, not just for each data set, but for each application. So yeah. AI, for example, will require a different set of information to, using the same data in a GIS suite. So that, the question of generalizing all of that to make a data set applicable in all circumstances is also another big issue.
Exactly, yeah. And how do you tailor each information flow to each requirement? And I do think, like, the technologies are there, it's the people and it's the drivers and it's the organizations coming together with the will to doing this. And I think in my experience, organizations are really busy because there's an awful lot going on, whether it's housing or farming or climate change or whatever, organizations have a huge amount of work to do right now. And it's very, very hard to stop and to say, has this been done already? If it's been done already, can I reuse it? Who do I need to go to? How can I get my hands on it? Is it in the right format? And they use the same projection system I'm interested in. So I think I think it's the people, which is nearly always the hardest problem to crack.
Yeah, absolutely.
And getting the people engaged.
Yeah. I suppose one of our ideas, we're developing proposals around data spaces, and one of our ideas is to try to gather that kind of information using technology, basically. Now, obviously, you need the people to input the information, but once it's input, it's there and it's accessible for any future users.
I would just say, hi Jenny, sorry, some of my colleagues from Malon were saying the chat is not available. So something we need to be aware. I'm sure it was available last week, so or last week or last presentation. So.
Oh, that's a pity. I know, I didn't realize that. So it's only the speakers have access to the chat.
Looks like at the moment.
Anyone that has any questions for Viv and myself can also personally message us as well. That's always open.
Yep, for sure. Or LinkedIn is another good one.
Yeah, I don't see any way of changing that at the moment. So.
Yeah, I don't see anything at the moment too. Maybe I one representative question I'm delegating myself. So I was curious, Vivienne, about the different projects that Compass Informatics are involved in. I know Compass are one of the service provider for the central government for DAFN. What about are there any involvement in broader EU projects or ESA projects? Yeah.
Yes, there's a few. Thanks for the question. We work with DAFM. We have the area monitoring system. I think Tara might have been on the call earlier. Tara's got a key role in the area monitoring system. And the area monitoring system is using Earth observation as a way to monitor what's happening in the field, and then it supports the farmers' claims for different crops and things like that. Beside that, then we have HubCap, which Jess will be familiar with from her Icon days. So HubCap is just coming towards an end now, and HubCap has focused in particularly on grazing and using Earth observation to try and identify grazing patterns in Ireland, which with our cloud cover is a particularly tricky thing. But so far, the feedback from the European Space Agency is really positive. Beyond the Earth observation, we've also kicked off a new project with University College London, and it's under the ESA Green Technology Information Factory, so GTIF. And it's building on what the Austrians have already done, what EOX and others have done in Austria on to look at sustainability in cities. So there's 5 elements of it. I always forget one, so I'm going to give it a go. There's urban heat and urban heat islands, solar panel positioning, particulate matter monitoring, air quality. I've forgotten 2 now, 2 others. So that's just kicking off, and we are interested in stakeholders, so if there's any engagement in that, we'll be very happy to have a chat about that. And then more broadly, we work with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Marine Institute, the Department of Housing. There's a new organisation called Healthy Ireland Local Government, and that's quite an exciting one where we are really focused on the reuse of data. We've been kind of told from the beginning, don't make new data, let's just see what we can do to reuse data and try and understand community wellness. And we're collaborating with the Royal College of Surgeons on that. So quite a few different projects and a lot of transport bits in there as well. So you could be doing anything in the morning, from agriculture to transport to wastewater treatment systems to, I don't know, solar panels, I guess. I hope, Sita, that answered the question.
Yes, thank you for that. Also,
Okay.
just
Yeah, I'm really sorry I can't figure out how to
I'm
chat.
seeing one option here to allow mic to individually, so I'm just testing that in case someone has a question. So I'm doing that at the moment.
Okay.
If anyone has a question, so you'd have the microphone available.
Yeah,
Okay,
I suppose I have a question for Jessica, please. For your hedgerow map, at the beginning you gave some figures about the length of hedgerows in Ireland, and I was just wondering, did that come from the Teagasc data, or where did you find them figures?
Yeah, I did find that in Teagasc. I don't remember what document it was from. But if that figure is wrong, please let me know.
No, just curiosity, honestly. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Darrell, was it?
Yeah. I know there was one figure from Teagasc, there was another from Daphne, and there was another from somebody, either National Park or Wildlife Service, somewhere. There are a couple of versions of that, yeah.
I think the National Tree Council might have another version of that.
And I know the 2022 LIPIS dataset was released as well. And one of our colleagues was looking into that to see the extent. So I think there are multiple different figures floating around there, but roughly, let's say between 650,000 to 700,000.
Yeah. Also, Dara was involved in our own hedgerow mapping project, so he would have better idea. But we were predominantly now we have one project we're using Blue Sky, but another one we're just using Sentinels.
I'm sure, as everyone knows, Sentinel-2 is, and it can be, a nightmare to work with in Ireland. The availability of imagery, if you're not looking at hedgerows, if you're looking at farmland and farm production, it can be quite challenging. But Dara, if you are interested, we can always take this conversation offline and I can learn more about what you've done.
It's all good, Jessica. I was just curious. I was just curious from my own, wondering where I might look in myself on where those figures might have come from, because obviously there's no exact figure. Like I'm aware of that. Yep. Thanks.
No problem.
That's great. So people can unmute themselves. That's terrific.
Yeah. So and everyone has the mic access now, so it's even better than
So you got a couple of minutes left if there's any more questions out there. Just while we're waiting, to remind people that this is the last webinar until September now. So we'll take a little break for the summer, July and August, and we'll be back the first week in September. Let me just check the date. And I believe we're going to have, no, I was going to say in BWS, but I think that's actually October. So the 4th of September, we'll be back. And hope to see you all then. I don't see anybody else unmuting, so I guess we can leave it at that for today. Thank you so much, Vivienne and Jessica. That was great. Really good.
Thanks you.
For being here.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks everyone for putting the initiative together. It's great to have. Thanks everyone for their time.
Yeah, it is great. And yeah, do everybody connect up on LinkedIn. You'll find us linked to the Women in Geospatial EUROGI Irish Chapter if you're looking for any of us. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
See you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.